Okay, so let me introduce our today's guest. It is my huge pleasure to host a rare guest, Janusz Leski. Hi, Janusz. A warm welcome to you.
Hello, Piotr. Hello. Great to see you. Hello to everybody.
How are you doing?
Great, great. I'm looking forward to this meeting. I'm really curious about how that's going to be received by you and what sort of questions, comments you will have about what I'm going to tell you today. So I'm really curious about that.
Initially, we wanted to squeeze it in the last year. We decided finally to postpone it um, because we felt like everybody was completely exhausted in December. So, and this is, I guess, too interesting to just squeeze in December. So here we are. So Janusz is an agile leader and leadership coach. Janusz helps leaders to grow and transform their organizations. Currently, Janusz is a senior agile coach at Ørsted, a company with a vision to create a world that runs entirely on green energy. I personally met Janusz during one of the biggest transformations, agile transformations of financial institutions in Poland, where Janusz's role was the role of transformation leader. And it was a few years ago, but this is where actually Janusz, I remember Janusz gained a lot of respect and many followers for being authentic and integral leader.
And I lost many
Uh,
hair.
and we stay in touch since then. And Janusz, I'm really curious. I know that since this time, your journey developed towards integral agility and deep transformative coaching. So I would like to ask you like a warm-up question. Could you share a bit more about what you specialize in currently and your favorite ways of influencing companies?
Yeah, certainly, Piotr. Going back to this agile transformation that we both were involved in, I have to say that that was a great experience, and really I took a lot of lessons from this experience. One of the, I think, key lesson was that in order to really not even so much be successful in agile transformation, but to make significant progress in transformation, to create this open agile organization focused on customer needs and open to supporting each other in the organization, you need special type of leaders in the organization. So what really became clear to me back then was that if you really want to transform organizations, we have to really work very closely with the leaders. And looking into this integral model of transformation, we really have to spend some time also talking about this internal transformation of individuals, but also of the collective team of leaders. And as you will see later in my presentation, I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges that we currently have, helping organizations, helping individuals to really develop their mind, their consciousness, the complexity of their consciousness. And that's what I'm trying to do here, working with leaders in my organization, helping some other leaders if they really would like to, use some coaching sessions with me. I'm also a big supporter of a methodology called immunity to change that is helping people who intend to change their behaviors, develop certain competencies, but they tried a number of times and they have, for some reason, been unsuccessful. So I'm helping them to overcome those sort of obstacles again, that come from their inner action logic, inner set of beliefs and assumptions to really, make this change.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I know that you're working closely with Michael Spade and Michael Hamann, and I would like to ask you, like, what do you find unique in their schools of thought?
Well, working closely, maybe that's a very nice phrase, but I feel being more like a student of Michael Spade and Michael Hamann, and I of course appreciate their teaching and their approach to developing leadership a lot, and it's based on this integral approach to transformation and to growth of persons, teams, and organizations. And I had a chance, perhaps in the last year or so, to really work closely with Michael Hamann more than with Michael Spade. And he is developing right now a wonderful initiative called Evolve Agility. He wrote a great book a few years ago about this inner development of leaders. This is based, of course, on this relatively new psychological theory of adult development. And I think I'm going to use some of his ideas from his book here in my presentation as well. And this is really something that is very helpful in creating this development environment for leaders to grow and be more ready to handle and face complex systems and complex challenges through that inner development of their action logic or sense-making capability.
Mm-hmm. Okay, it feels like we are getting into your topic. But before we jump into your presentation, one maybe simple but yet a cardinal question for me. So, in all your years of career, like, why do you choose to focus on your attention and your time and your and your energy on leadership? Why is that?
I think that this is really linked to the current situation that we are in, really, as humanity. I think, we as humans, on the one hand, have a lot of new opportunities. On the other hand, we have huge challenges. And the leadership here is really needed, in my opinion, to face and overcome those challenges. And what is needed is this collective approach. So we have to learn how to work together, how to prioritize our activities, our tasks differently, how to pay attention to what really is important for us to be developing and growing the society or humanity. And I'm talking here about collaboration, not only within a team or within an organization, but also across different geographies, across different religions, political parties. We have to learn not how to fight each other, but how to work with each other. And then, in my opinion, this is the sort of challenge that we really have to overcome for us really to be a successful race, a successful group of humans on this planet. This is nothing really new, because if you have a chance to read Robert Greenleaf, his wonderful essay on servant leadership, he's basically back in the 70s of last century saying that he's interested, or he was interested during his university years, learning about leadership, because back then he was saying, and actually his teachers at the university were saying, that we had a serious leadership crisis. So, here we are, 50, 60 years later, and the situation, I don't think, is improved. I think, on one hand, perhaps in organizations, we can see some improvement But overall, I think we have still, perhaps because we have different and bigger challenges, the effort needed to really develop and grow leaders is right now much more urgent than it ever has been in our history.
All right. Thank you. I personally have got lots of questions, but actually, let's use this chance to do some collective learning. Anyone from the audience wants to ask a question now, please? If not, Janusz, the floor is yours. So.
Okay, good, great. So
maybe Janusz, before you start, hello everybody. Sorry, I'm just trying to take my breath because I'm in a working out session parallelly. But the question is, Janusz, do you see any changes in your behavior during your path in the last 10 years?
Thank you, Mirek. This is really a great question, and I have to say, of course, yes. You know, when I compare how I think, make sense, and behave and cooperate now to how I was behaving, thinking, making decisions, say 10 years ago, there's a huge difference, right? And the difference really came from, I think, main two sources. One source was an incredible amount of really great people that I had a chance to meet when I was working at Santander and leading the Agile transformation. And they really helped me a lot to look at certain things through different lenses. And then I have to tell you the other source of big change and probably even a bigger change is linked to actually COVID, because COVID created an environment that a lot of opportunities were suddenly not available to us. But on the other hand, some new opportunities emerged that were not available before COVID. And this is really through internet connections, different seminars, webinars, cohorts, programs that suddenly became available on the internet. And before, in order to participate in some of the meetings, I would need to go somewhere to the States or to another place in Europe. And suddenly that was available on the internet. And I had a chance to really participate in a number of different programs, but also meet incredible amount of wonderful people. Some of them are here today with us, like Sabina and William. So, and that was really, you know, great experience. I had a chance, of course, to meet Michael Spade and Michael Hammond, and that was another great experience that I had, and that really helped me to grow a lot. So I think it reduced the level of frustration and tension that I had at the end of the Agile transformation, where I wasn't really very happy about how that all sort of the direction it was going through. And the programs that I participated in and the discussions that I had actually helped me to really understand through this integral model of transformation why it's so difficult to actually do a transformation properly, right? If it can be done properly at all, and how complex this transformation is. And therefore, it's quite understandable that if we don't work on that leadership, growth, and development, then all the transformations probably will at some point stop and start rolling back. Of course, I had a chance also to meet and work and discuss many times different things with Lisa Atkins, which is again another great hero that I admire, and that was really very helpful, and I appreciate that a lot.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, Sabina. Yeah.
Because Mirek, thank you for your inspiring question. It led me to another question actually, and that is, Janusz, how has the way you relate to leadership shifted to your own leadership?
Well, in a shifted probably in a few different ways. One of the ways is that I really appreciate now much more than I used to in the past relationship with individual people, and that may be a little bit surprising compared to the topics of today's talk, but that's really the case. So what that means for me, that if I see that somebody is in a situation that I may actually help that person develop and grow and understand certain things, then I'm really very willing to spend my time talking to that person, right? Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have to be like a CEO or a management board member, and it doesn't really matter. It's just there's a person who has some needs, who has some challenges or problems, who he can see some opportunities to grow, and feels things that I can actually help him or her to make the next step or two. So I think the lessons that I took was that it's good to find time for such people, because slowly, step by step, with individuals, we will build this force that at some point is going to get over the tipping points, and we'll see the results. So instead of trying to look for some big transformation projects or programs, I prefer to work with teams, with individuals, with groups, coaching, training, working with. I also like to always connect the teaching with some practical activities, so that's not only enclosed in a room at the university or at the organization for 1 or 2 day workshop, but it's important then to actually go into the business, go into the people who are supposed to use some of the stuff in real life and work with them, making sure that they know how to do that and they actually do it, right? So, and that actually gives me also a lot of satisfaction too, I have to say, because I can see that I can actually make change and bring value to some of the people, which is really a great feeling.
Thank you.
All right. Let's start with the topic, with the presentation. Of course, feel free to interrupt and ask questions, and then we will have a Q&A closer to the end of the session.
Okay, I have prepared a few slides which I will show to you in a moment. And this presentation, as you will see, about collective leadership effectiveness, it's a little bit like this trip in the mountains. So you will see in a moment that in this trip, we will go over through some hills and some valleys of different topics. But I think that, and I hope that you will be able to see that those topics are sort of linked together into almost like a theory that relates to this collective leadership effectiveness. So I would like you to maybe go with me on this journey, go through those valleys and hills for some time, and then maybe let's have a discussion. I would like you to wait a little bit to see the whole picture, to see all the mountains around before we dive into any specific topics. And I would like to start on the first hill, which is called complexity. And I understand that you probably all have a good understanding of complex systems and Kinevin. I will not go too deep into that, but only stress the key characteristics of complex systems and complexity, stressing that our current business environment is a complex environment, right? And the complex environment means that we have a situation where our systems, our complex systems, are unbound, are open. They have multi-dimensional. They are multi-dimensional. They have many different dimensions, many different factors that interact with each other without one-way cause and effect relationship. So the complexity means that because of the unbound systems, the number of dimensions that the systems have, and the lack of clear cause and effect relationship, there's an element of unpredictability in complex systems. So we cannot be sure actually what's going to happen next. We cannot be sure what's going to happen next. Even if we have experts around us who knows things that most of people do not know in a specific area of expertise, they will still not be able to find out what's going to happen next in our activities in the business that we conduct. And of course, not all activities of the business have a complex nature, but some of them do. And the ones that do relate to things that have a significant, heavy involvement of humans. So human development, but also product development, application development, when there's a strategy, market forces, competition, market competition, all those factors have character of a complex system. So that's one hill. The other hill is called our biases. So we have certain natural tendencies that developed with humanity over the tens of thousands of years. We behave in certain way. For instance, we like to tell ourselves relatively simple stories to clarify events taking place around us. So we have tendency to simplify things. If we have a complex challenge, a complex problem, we very often tend to simplify it, sending around a signal to people that work with us that we are in control, that we know what is happening, that we are experts, that we know how to solve the problem, that we are right. This actually is a little bit of a mind trap, right? We have some biases, and I will show you here a few examples of those biases that actually describe the way we work and how we usually react to certain events taking place around us. For instance, in this projection bias, we overestimate the extent in which the future will resemble the present situation. We tend to think that it's going to be not that much different than the situation we are currently in. Egocentric empathy gap is again a trap in which we fall into, which basically tells us that the other people think pretty much as we do or value the things that we value. So there's not much difference between us and the other people. Hypothesis confirmation bias, we search for the facts that support our insights or conclusions or solutions. Selective perception, we overestimate some factors on the expense of other factors. And last but not least, availability bias. So we tend to underestimate solutions that we find difficult to imagine. And now, what is happening right now? What is happening right now that if you actually put those two sort of hills together, so if you see that we have an environment that is complex, we are facing complex systems, complex challenges. And on the other hand, we have those natural tendencies, those cognitive heuristics, as being nicely called, premature cognitive commitments that we actually tend to jump into conclusions before actually we can and we should do that. That creates a problem, right? So very often the result of that combination of complexity and our biases results that we move in Kinevin side from simple and complex, complicated systems into chaos, right? And then we have real problem. So one of the first, I think, responsibilities and huge, incredible tasks for the leaders is actually to slow down, to pull a handbrake, to slow down and create what sometimes has been called an adaptive space. So not jump into the conclusion, not jump into the solution, but step back and do that in a team of leaders to create a space to actually think, okay, so what is the real problem that we are trying to solve here? And what are the possible solutions to this problem? And then perhaps doing some experiments, and then starting building the solutions. So turn off the automatic pilot, slow down, create the space for your team to work on better understanding the problem and identifying possible solutions. And then I would like to spend some time talking about leadership circle profile. This is a method. It's like a 360 survey used to really evaluate, assess leaders' effectiveness. And this is done with millions of participants in hundreds of thousands of organizations. So they have a huge data to work with. And they basically work on 128 different questions that the respondent have to answer. And based on that, they build a picture of an individual that has actually two half circles. There is the bottom half circle that creates and contains our natural reactive tendencies. So they basically say, okay, how do we normally, naturally react to certain threats around us? How do we behave? How do we protect ourselves? So we can have the tendency to do that through controlling, as you can see here on this inner right circle, by actually pretending or trying to be in control of a situation, by actually driving people to perform, trying to be perfect, putting the level of expectations from ourselves and from others quite high, being very ambitious, sometimes being autocratic. We want to be in control and we want to control others. The other natural tendency, our protective tendency, relates more to intellect, when we think that our value is linked to the fact that we are intelligent, we are bright, we've experienced many things in our lives, and we can share our knowledge with others, but we actually think that we are better and more intelligent than the others. So that creates a little bit of a distance between us and the others. And last but not least, on the left side here, this reactive tendency is called complying. So we think that we are valued because we can actually address certain needs and desires of somebody else. And we are very open to those needs. We try to fulfill those needs. We sort of a little bit forget about our own desires and needs, and we focus our others exclusively on identifying the needs of the other individuals or groups. And these are our natural tendencies. Each of us has some tendencies. Of course, controlling and complying, maybe they don't usually go together, but certain aspects of protecting and complying, or protecting and controlling, can come together. And as I said, these are not negative tendencies. They may become negative if we overdo them, right? So the big question actually is, and this is paradoxical too, like, who is in control here? Are we controlling our reactive tendencies, or do our reactive tendencies control us, right? Because if they control us, then there may be a problem. So this controlling side suddenly means that we always try to be the number one. We always try to beat everybody. We want to achieve everything that is possible to be achieved. We want to dominate. We want to always win. That's just going too far. On the protecting side, we take the attitude that we are superior, that we are self-sufficient, that we are distant. We are a little bit arrogant too, right? On the complying side, we basically want to be loved by all. Right? We want to meet everybody's all expectations and needs. We want to make everybody happy, which of course is not possible. We are pleasing. We want to be accepted by everybody. So if those our natural tendencies becoming too strong, then of course they take over control of us, and as you will see in a moment, it has some negative consequences, and for us and for us as leaders as well. The top half of this circle relates to creative competencies that we have as humans and as leaders. And again, here we can start on the left side here. How do we work with others? How do you relate to others? How do we work with people in our team? How do we support collaboration between teams? How do we support people development? Self-awareness. How much do we care about our own development? How aware are we of our shadows, of our weaknesses? Are we composed? Can we really control our emotions in a positive way? How authentic we are and integral? Can we actually talk about the undiscussables, the topics that are difficult and hard? Do we have system awareness? Can we talk about system thinking, system approach in our organization? But not only this, can we talk about sustainable productivity? Can we talk about sustainable growth? Can we talk about community or social concerns going outside the organization to the society and to the humanity overall in general? And last but not least, the achieving part. Can we actually achieve some real goals and objectives here that are linked to our vision, to our deep purpose, to our strategy? Are we good and effective and efficient in making some decisions? So these are all sort of the competencies that actually are creative and have huge impact on our leadership effectiveness. Huge positive impact, as you will see in a moment. But before that, let me show you those two circles here. You see the 10% of the least effective leaders on the left side and the 10% of the most effective leaders on the right side. So you will see that on the top 10% of the most effective leaders, that they also have some values in the bottom half of the circle, right? The green color designates how they are being assessed by others. The black lines tell how they self-assess themselves, right? But as you can see, in some areas, the values are quite high. For instance, driving here, this particular person has at the level of over 60% in the eyes of others. So, it's quite actually high. He's like this in this 10% of most effective leaders. So I'm not suggesting to get rid of the reactive natural tendencies. But as you will see here on the left side, when it comes to the least effective leaders, the reactive tendencies are much stronger than the creative competencies of those leaders, right? And that's what creates the situation in which they are not really effective. So what's happening here, before I go into that, one of the key values of this leadership circle profile analysis is that it actually link the actions of the leaders with their internal action logic. So it tells me, okay, how I behave is linked to how I think, how I feel, what values I have, what assumptions I have, how I make decisions, how I make sense of events around me, right? And I mentioned to you that this is based on a huge set of data, and they conducted some statistical analysis of this data, and they basically, as you can see here, proved a strong negative correlation between leadership effectiveness and reactive tendencies. So the more reactive tendencies and the stronger reactive tendencies I have as a leader, the less strong or the weaker is my leadership effectiveness, right? So there's this negative correlation between one and the other, unlike the creative competencies and the leadership effectiveness. Then there's a big correlation, but there's a positive correlation. So the more I grow my creative competencies, the more effective I am as a leader, right? But not only this, they also did some analysis, and they actually calculated statistically that there's a strong correlation between leadership effectiveness and business performance of the organization. So if you this is really very interesting, because if you talk to the leaders of the current organizations, and most of them are achievers or experts, this, in my opinion, is the language to talk to them. So if you are a leader of organization, and you have a team, and you are an achiever, if you want to be successful, you have to have effective leaders in your team, and you yourself have to be an effective leader. And in order to have effective leaders and be effective leader, you have to grow their creative competencies, and you have to somehow reduce their reactive tendencies, right? Well, actually, you reduce the reactive tendencies by growing the creative competencies, not the other way around. So how does that look like? You can think that each of us sometimes react to certain problems or fears. Some of us sometimes we behave in this creative way. So it's not like a black and white, but what's really important here is this the gravity. Where is the gravity here? What is our most common reaction and our common behavior and our way of thinking and making sense in the world around us? So we can actually, behave as a leader in such a way that we focus on problems around. We keep firefighting problems that pop up around us. So we see a problem, we sense a fear, we become afraid of something, we react to that, we solve the problem, the fear disappears, and we are back to where we started. But then again, there is another problem, and again, we fear, we are afraid of something, we react, we solve the problem, but basically, we behave in the sinusoidal way. We don't really learn too much. We basically are driven by fear and focus on problem solving. And this is the reactive approach. On the creating side, you are not so much focused on problems. It doesn't mean that you don't solve problems, you solve problems, but you are focused on your purpose, the purpose and the vision. And you are driven not by fear, but by your passion to actually put that vision into reality. And you plan and execute some actions, and you grow that vision, strengthen the passion, and you basically develop yourself as well, right? So this is, to some extent, almost like an existential tension between, on the one hand, safety that we long to, on the other hand, purpose and creation, right? So, if you would like to really be very creative and be focused on the purpose and the vision and do that in a totally safe way, that's probably not going to be possible, right? So you have to take some risk in order to follow your vision and work on your purpose. Now, I think what is happening right now is that the biggest change in the 21st century is not so much related to technological progress. It comes from this technological progress, but it's related, and I here agree with Peter Drucker, it's related to the fact that we as humans, and quite a lot of us as humans, have the possibility to make choices about our lives. It wasn't like that until now, right? So people, the group of people who actually could make those choices about their lives was never such big as it is right now. Like, because we are in a relatively safe environment, we can actually make relatively safe choices and decisions about our lives and the purpose and the vision that we want to pursue. Now we just have to become aware of that and use it, right? So become less reactive, because there are no wild animals around the corner. So we have to be less reactive and more creative in our approach, because also, we have those huge challenges around us that the humanity is facing. And then what is happening too is that the Leadership Circle profile conducted some analysis of the comments that they received from respondents about the leaders' strengths and weaknesses. And when they analyzed those comments and they did some, again, statistical analysis, they said that the creative leaders have much more positive comments than they have, you can work on improving this and this and that, right? Weaknesses, areas to improvement. Of course, that's the other way around in the reactive leaders, when they have much more comment on this, you need to improve this and that, this is your strength. So what is happening here, and this is the collective effectiveness that comes to the picture, is when you have a leadership team that has both the creative leaders, but also very, very strong reactive leaders, the weaknesses of the reactive leaders zero out the strength of the creative leaders. So the total effectiveness of the collective effectiveness of the whole leadership team, it's much smaller than it would have been if you didn't have such strong reactive leaders in that leadership team. And I just want to also clarify that I don't here really mean, sales director versus risk director, right? Like the sales director is a creative guy because he's selling stuff, and the head of risk is the reactive one that has to keep things under control. That's not what I mean here, right? You can have a CRO, the chief risk officer, that is very creative, in the sense that he is driven by purpose, and he's open, and he's ready to face complex challenges, and he knows how to work with other people, including the salespeople. And you may have a sales director that is very reactive, right? Because he's protecting himself. Okay, so let's go to the next here. And this is really something that actually puts the strength of leadership or our complexity of our consciousness or our mind in relation to the complexity of the world that we live in. So as you can look at this vertical line here, I'm sure you're going to put your dot closer to the VUCA arrow than to the safe, certain, simple, and clear arrow at the bottom of this. Our world is complex, and it's changing faster and faster and faster. It's not going to slow down. But then you have the complexity of the mind, and again, using the psychological theory of Bob Kegan, it uses here the socialized, self-altering, and self-transforming mind as stages of development of the consciousness of the leaders of adult people, adults. So what is happening here is that the complexity of the world is at a certain level, and this level is much higher than the complexity of consciousness of our leaders. And the difference that is between the current leadership consciousness threshold or complexity level and the complexity level of the world, this is the developmental challenge that we have, right? This is the gap that we have to narrow, that we have to somehow remove. Now, this is happening when you have like a leadership team, or when you look at the individuals. But if you look at the leadership team, and you have a situation that you have in this team reactive leaders that are not very efficient, that are very inefficient, actually this collective development challenge is increasing suddenly, right? So there's it's much more difficult thing to actually work as a leadership team in such a way that you can actually face the collective, the complex situation around you in the business environment in which you conduct your business. And the organization cannot perform at a level higher than the collective effectiveness of the top leadership team. That's the key statement here, right? So you may have, a very creative, very proactive, very open, quite advanced in this development path CEO, who may be even at the self-transforming level, but if in his team he has got 2 or 3 people who are very reactive, then of course the effectiveness of the whole team is going to deteriorate and will be much smaller. And the whole team then, as you certainly can observe in your organizations, sometimes will start play certain games, right? So people will avoid talking about certain topics because they know that they have those reactive guys in their group, and they will not be able to convince them anyway. So they have to, pretend that certain topics do not exist, or they actually start pretending themselves that they are somebody else that they really are. in the organization, which creates a huge problem because instead of working on solving some significant real problems, they spend a lot of time, energy, and effort on pretending that they're somebody else than they really are. And of course, our big challenge is, what to do to narrow this gap. We can either reduce the complexity of the work or increase the complexity of the consciousness of the leaders. The first option doesn't exist, in my opinion. So the only option we have is to increase the collective effectiveness and complexity of the leadership. And very closely to the end, it is possible to actually help the leaders to grow their consciousness and grow the complexity of their minds. One of the approach here is the one described by Michael Hammond in Evolve Agility, deliberately developmental environment. When you create an environment, a holding environment, which basically, everybody is taking some psychological challenges, some developmental challenges. They want to grow and develop certain competencies or skills that they do not have, but those competencies, the challenges actually is of a nature that is going to change the way they think. It's going to change their inner action logic. And in order to do that, they not only need the tools, which I will show you in a moment, but they also need, and this is very, very important, psychological support from their group of leaders. And that's this third dimension when I think this collective approach is so important. Then if you really want to grow the consciousness of the leaders, it's not an individual sport, it's a team sport. You have to create this psychological support for the leaders that want to work on growing their consciousness and grow the complexity of their consciousness. Yeah, the practices that Michael Hammond is describing in his wonderful book, we will not go through all of them, but as you will see here, like deliberately developmental conversation, shared sense-making conversation, developmental actions, thought openers. These are all activities that include at least two people. You cannot have like deliberately developmental conversation on your own. You need somebody to talk to, right? And the same about sense-making conversation. So this is pretty much a collective activity. And also on the other hand, when you go into the action mode on the left side here on this picture, seeing the whole system, continuous tuning when you actually run some experiments in the business. These are all things that actually require collaboration in a team, in a leadership team. Co-leadership, of course, is another example of that. And a very similar approach, maybe with some different names, is presented by Robert Keegan and Lisa Leahy in Everyone Culture when they talk about deliberately developmental organizations. So again, Michael Hammond was talking about the psychological challenge. They talk about the edge, right? So they have those three domains. One domain is edge. So adult can grow. You have to define what is your development purpose, your development goal. You set up some development principles, like for instance, to be very, very open, transparent about your plan, your development goals, your weaknesses, your failures. Then there's this domain of home, which is this the psychological support that you need, right? Everybody needs a crew. Everybody needs a group of people to work with on his or her development. And last but not least, Michael Hammond was talking about the development tools. They talk about practices, groove, that you have to use in order to develop. So all those three domains, edge, home, and groove, with those 12 dimensions that you can see here, work together and support each other and create an environment in which the leaders can grow their consciousness and become much more effective as leaders. Because all that comes to this, that you grow the leaders not so much for the purpose of growth, you grow the leaders in order to be more effective as leaders and be able to handle more complex challenges and more complex situations, including the ones that we face as a humanity. And this is the last slide I'd like to show to you. We need the complexity of mind and heart of our leadership, individually and collectively, to match the complexity of the world we face. The development of our leaders' inner meaning-making complexity is our sustainability imperative, in my opinion. It's a sustainability imperative. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to talk to you about this presentation. Does it make sense to you? Does it resonate with you? Does it cause your curiosity? How do you respond to that?
Amen.
Well, and there's a lot of things to consider. My first question is about, so I understand the left-hand side of the self-development, right? The socialized mind and the self-authoring mind, and then self-transcendence. And this looks like something that I maybe experienced in my personal life, and in many situations. Where I struggle is how to take this personal journey and apply it to leadership team. I mean, because this journey is so difficult and so personal, and now you have to do it in the leadership. And in my experience, leadership teams are rarely teams, right? They're mostly groups of people with strong agendas, with high egos, and this is what I saw in companies, right? So, but this collective growth takes this challenge of raising the level of consciousness to completely different level of difficulty for me. So what are the techniques, tools for applying this self-development on the team level?
And this is really a great question, Piotr, and we talk about it with Sabina many times, but I'll tell you what I think about this, right? So I think that there are certain leaders, I think, who would understand what you're talking about if you talk about growing consciousness from socialized to self-authoring to self-transforming mind. I think that they are able to understand that, right? So if you can reach those leaders and get the opportunity and possibility to talk to them about this in terms of their growth, but also in terms of growing their leadership team, congratulations. That's a great opportunity you have. But I think that most of them, and this is not only at the top level, but also like team leaders, they probably will not understand, in my opinion, what you talk about when you talk about growing leadership, consciousness, complexity. So you can, of course, take one part to run a program and explain that to them step by step, which of course is possible too. But I think what is more effective is to perhaps use some coaching and use some other needs that they have and helping them address those needs through some development coaching sessions. You can actually pull them slowly in this direction. So by asking certain development questions, by conducting those sense-making conversations with them, without calling that like this, and without explaining the whole psychological theory of adult development, you can actually make them aware about their own action logic, about their assumptions, their beliefs, but also how that action logic that they currently have may limit their effectiveness as leaders. And if you can do that, then this is like the first step to actually start working with them on their possible further development and growth.
Awesome.
To some extent, I'm going to quote here Bob Keegan that I'm recommending here to use a Trojan horse, so that introduce some achievement that this leader is really keen to get in terms of meeting some business goals, and actually work with him, helping him to do that. But on the other hand, doing that at the same time, focusing through this conversational, conscious, deliberate conversation on the action logic of the leader, right?
Okay, Janusz, so I have another question. Replying to your question, it resonates in my mind very well. So thank you for that. You mentioned something like it is worth to press the brake and look around, be aware of the situation you are in, think about it, and then maybe you will come up with better ideas, better solutions. So how do you face it in your organization, or how to convince other people that this kind of way of work is really crucial to be successful on the markets?
Thank you, Björk, for that. And here I have to say that we are, and Roberto can confirm that we are in a good situation, because in the last year and a half, perhaps, we have a very green light and support from the management of the organization to really do some serious product management, right? Some product management. Actually, today and tomorrow, I'm co-facilitating two-day workshop on product management here in Warsaw with a group of 30 people, which is really great. But the key aspect of product management is basically slow down. Don't jump into solutions. Think first about users or customer problems, their needs, their pains. Like, how can you help them, right? So product discovery, opportunity solution trees, defining goals as outcomes in terms of, how do, as you know, Mirek, very well, because we did it Santander too, how you want to change behavior of the customers, right? But we are working very hard at Ørsted right now to do that, right? To make sure that not only product owners, but also product managers, but also like the members of the boards think in those terms. So, for instance, one of the key results that they expect to see this and next year is that the top management is going to talk to the teams about what they would like the team to work on, not in terms of giving their certain specific features or solutions to prepare, but actually talking about problems or opportunities to focus on, right? So this is a different language. Of course, there is still a way to go, right? It's not working perfectly, but this is how I see, an opportunity to create what I call this adaptive space, not to be just, be a feature factory. You go through the backlog feature after feature and you just actually do it. And the more you do, the better. No. The least you do, the better, because, if you can get the same outcome with a smaller amount of outputs, that's better, right? So that's the thinking that we are going through right now in the organization.
Thank you, Janusz.
You're welcome.
I'm curious, but how does it land for other participants?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you, Janusz, for bringing this piece of very valuable information, making sense, and share it with us in a real easy way. So what I wonder is, if you have to work with in an organization let's say, 2,500 people, and with a leadership team about 10%, let's say 250 leaders. What happened to me actually is like it looks like very difficult to go leader by leader, not individually working with them, trying to make them understand and try to get involved in this inner developmental process. So from the collective point of view, what is your experience, or what resonates for you if you try to see the leadership as an emerging property of that complex system? You know, how you can work in order to set the conditions that something emerge and you can get together more than one leader or a cohort, something similar to that.
Yeah, thank you, William. You know, of course, I'm fully aware of how difficult it is to even start talking about things like that with the leaders, especially if they are reactive. Because once you start talking to them about 360 LCP, and that's going to tell them how effective they are as leaders, they don't even want to know, right? So they then want to take this survey. So I think that's responding to Sabina's question before. I don't even try. Well, I am trying, but with awareness that I should put into this only a little bit of an effort, and actually put much more effort into different relationships that I have in the organizations right now. So the key thing is, like, who is there in the organization, in the leadership team, that you can actually start talking to about things like that, right? So 250 people, you will not be able to talk to all of them, even to half of them, even to a quarter of them at the same time, right, about this. So find somebody, if it's the top level, great, but if not, trying to find somebody at a certain level that actually is open to this idea. So he's more on the creative side than the reactive side, and is ready and willing to work on this. And here, to be maybe a little bit careful with the approach, if they are not ready to have individual 360s done for them in LCPs, you can propose to them a collective leadership assessment, as you know, William. So it's a similar structure of this survey, but it doesn't evaluate effectiveness of individual leaders. It assesses effectiveness of a leadership team that you define. And the response there is not so much how you assess yourself and how others assess you as in the individual 360 LCP. It's how the team sees themselves now in all those 29 competencies and or dimensions, and how they would like to be in the future. So then you can actually identify for the leadership team some competencies gaps that they should, in their opinion, they should focus on to narrow next in the near future. So that would be one approach. Another approach is actually, and this is actually following this Lisa Atkins approach. You just have to go as close as you can to those leaders, just one step ahead of them, and actually pull them slowly, basically trying to understand what problems they have, and not what you can offer to them, but what problems they have and how you can help them solve the problems using the tools and methods that you have. And this is a little bit of this Trojan horse. So you don't tell them, okay, you work on your growing your consciousness complexity, or try to go to the next stage of adult development. No, but actually you start talking to them about certain problems that they have, see what options they have to solve the problems, how they approach this. And by asking certain developmental questions, you can actually make them aware about some of the assumptions that they have without even being aware that they have such assumptions, right? And so that would be my recommendation and my proposition here.
Thank you, Janusz. Very useful. Great.
Thank you.
Right, it's 8:10. Any other questions? I think we've got 5 more minutes, at least.
And maybe I really would like to hear some of you guys. What I was talking about today, was it really very new and surprising to you, or was it pretty much something that you already knew before? Maybe I only reversed some of the stuff, but nothing really that revealing and then new to you. If the people who didn't say anything yet, if they could actually relate to that, like, is this something really new, perhaps a little bit revealing, interesting, or not so?
I like the leadership, the wheel that you showed. It is first time that I've seen it. Something that I'm curious. I like all those tools. I have those assessments. It's always, there is a bit of a, let's say, playful aspect that I like, but still they always inspire me. And then also I took some notes about different people that you mentioned, and I'm lucky enough that I can then write on Teams, given that we are in the same company. That's very easy. But thank you for sharing, Janusz.
Thank you, Roberto. Thank you. That's great. Thank you.
Hi, Janusz.
Hi, Camila. Hi.
Hey. I think for me it was new, so I was not familiar with leadership cycles. And if I'm honest, I am looking for something to start working with leadership team. As you know, it's always a challenge because of you need to have an agreement to start.
Yes.
And you cannot force something upon them, and probably find the right alliances, various influencing techniques to actually get them to open to take participation in this type of assessment sessions. But I can see it could be transformational to actually have a pause and reflect on themselves. So I think it's very, very useful tool that can change transformation for better.
It is quite powerful, and of course, if they are willing to try, they can try that individually without really sharing the reports with other people. And that's not an unusual approach to take, so that, at some point, hopefully they will be more trusting each other and they can actually start talking about their weaknesses and their development goals. But initially it can be very confidential to other leadership team members. It's important to start. It's important to start.
Thank you for the presentation. Very useful again. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm really curious, Sabina. You're trying to be quiet.
Yo, you noticed. Well, the point is, I know Janusz and you, both of you, very well. I find it so compelling, Janusz, how you combine so much theoretical perspectives and make it so easy accessible. Because I think you are languaging stuff that's really like, could be experienced as wishy-washy, but you bring it in a way like bridging some kind of a gap. I don't know. That's what I make of it. So yeah, I took some pictures actually, especially the picture in which you drew the reinforcing cycles of problem, fear, solution, and then the other one. That one was really resonating for me and brought me to the situation at my work. By the way, maybe not accidentally, but today I showed my leadership circle profile to our new CAO. And when he saw it, he said, "Oh, I did the same thing last year." And then he took his one, and And we were comparing our leadership styles. Like, oh my goodness, he said, no, that's not a very high rate. We were laughing about it. But it immediately brought us really together, like, oh, we did the same thing. And what does this say about you? I did not expect you to be that way. And we were also talking about maybe we should do this with the leadership team. And I wanted to say to Piotr and also to, I think it was Mirek, I'm not sure, but every team and also leadership team is a fractal. You might, or you could see it as a fractal for the whole organization. So everything that a leadership team is grappling with is an example of what the whole organization is working with. And of course, William, my organization is also 3,000 people. And they started with a program like mindful and emergent leadership, but not at the top, middle management. That didn't work. That didn't work. No. Yeah. So there's not just one solution for how to work with 200 people. There would be, what was the bias again that makes us want to have one solution? I don't know what the name of the bias was, but there is a bias. Yeah. So it's hard work, and the emergent uses us as instruments. We coaches, we leaders, we are the instruments. We all are. So it might be one at a time, and then we grow the new collective leadership for beautiful possibilities in the future. And sometimes I just start to talk the strange language of sense making and deliberate sense making, and I just drop these words because I really believe, but this is of course the work of Hammond too, by using new language you manifest a new possibility. So sometimes we do that really deliberately. We are Trojan horses. We all are. I am. Witches, Trojan horses.
The clarification that Janusz made at the beginning, or well, almost at the beginning, like complexity, uncertainty, the biases, because one thing that I noticed is that how people jump to the conclusion, to the solution, to let's try this kind of stuff. It's like, let's slow down the process, not the sense-making process, try to understand and assume that we are in a complex environment system. So feel comfortable with uncertainty is a huge challenge, I think, for leaders.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if they miss it, we end up in chaos.
Yeah.
That's the price we pay for that. And that's why it's important to keep reminding them, slow down, think why. What are we trying to achieve here?
Yeah. The what, so what, not what is something that is very useful for me. It's like, I guess you are trying to talk about the now what, but what about the what? It's like, yes. let's go to the beginning. It's like,
yeah.
But thank you very much, Janusz. I really appreciated the effort, and it was really useful.
Thank you very much to all of you for your attention, for your comments and questions and support, and to Piotr also, of course, for organizing this event. Thank you, Piotr.
So my takeaway from tonight is that there is one task of a leader that really opens the door for this deliberately developmental organization. It's pretty simple, right? You open the door by taking a step back to create the space.
Wow.
And then the whole beauty begins. Thank you, Janusz. Ladies and gentlemen, it was my pleasure to host Janusz Leski today, and the recording will shortly be available on YouTube. Thank you for your participation, and see you on the next Future of Work Talks. Stay in touch.
Yeah.
Have a lovely evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Piotr, for all the effort you're doing, you're bringing.